So this one applies to piano, probably some of the same principles you could apply to guitar as well. And essentially what I want to talk about is different chord voicings. Why do we need to know about this? Well, a lot of people, when they play chords initially, they learn that the chord is the 1, the 3 and the 5, and so then they'll always play them in that order. And so if you're playing a 1 going to a 4, you can hear there's some quite big jumps going there. 1 to a 5. And so these big jumps, they sound kind of ploddy and not particularly musical. So what we want to do is we want to look at how can we alter our chord formations, the different shapes of the chords, so that we're still playing the same chords, but they have a bit of a better flow to them. And so I did speak in another video about inversions, and what we're going to look at here is really how we use those inversions in our everyday playing. And there's something I like to call on the piano like a rule of least movement. If I'm playing accompaniment for people to sing to, I actually don't want big jumps between the chords. What I want is the chords to flow very close to each other so that the music kind of gets quite smooth and homogenized almost, so that when the people are singing there's not big jumps in the background confusing them as to what note to sing next. This is particularly important when you're playing in spontaneous worship, and so it's just an improvised situation and the guys in the congregation are singing. Remember, most of the guys in the congregation are not trained singers, so they don't know about music and they don't know how to hold close to the music with their melodies that they're singing, and so they may just be singing 1 note, 2 notes. And so there's some important rules that we can learn to help the guys join in with us in those moments of spontaneous worship. The one rule is to find a note that is possible you can just keep it the same all the way through what you're playing. So say, for example, here I'm in the key of C, and so that's my basic C chord. Now there's really 3 notes in the chord of C. Let's take the 5th note. That's the 5. We can include that 5th note in the chord of G. We can include it as a sus2 in the chord of F. If we were in D minor, we could add it there as a 4th note. Even if I was playing A minor, I could add it there as the 7th note. And so I can actually play that note in every chord that I want to use in the key of C. So let me show you what that sounds like. So I'm now playing, I'm going to change the chords, but I'm keeping that note there. It's like a drone note, like on a bagpipe, where you just have that one note that just keeps going all the time. But instead of being a low note, it's a mid note. It's sort of in the vocal area. So there's someone who's trying to sing along, has something that they can hook into. So now I'm a singer, I don't know anything about music, I'm just in the congregation singing. I hear this one note, at least it gives me something I can hook into. And even though the chords are changing, I've got something that I can make a connection with, and I can sing along, I can worship in the Spirit, I can be spontaneous in worship, and I've been given this lifeline really by whoever it was playing the piano there in that moment. Now you'll have seen because of doing that, I'm having to change the shapes of the chords that I'm playing. I can't do this if I'm going to jump up here, because I want to keep that note in the same place. And so the shape of the chords I'm playing with the rest of this hand and my other hand is changing because of that. So now my C might look like this, but my G is going to look like this. If I go into an F, I'm actually playing my F in the 2nd position. I've got an added 6 there, and I've got technically it's a 9, I suppose, or a 2nd note there. D minor, I'm playing it as a 7, and it's got here, this is the 4th, and then back to a G, where it's the root note of that chord, and then back to the C, where I'm playing it as the 5th, And so all those chords I was able to play without ever taking my little finger off that one note. And so all the chords, by changing the inversions or the positions of the chords, I'm able to keep that drone note going. It really, really helps the guys who are going to be worshiping the Spirit. So just to mention then, while we're on this idea, some of the notes you could possibly add to a chord just to make it a little smoother and move between some of the chords where you need to change the shape a little bit. To work around something like this. Pretty much it's always safe to use the notes of the chord. It's also nearly always safe to add a second note to a chord, because the second note doesn't really colour the chord in a way that pushes it somewhere else. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. And the same with the 6. If I add the 6 to the chord, it doesn't really move it. Now, if I was to play this chord, that's a G7, it feels like it needs to go there. There's a resolution needed when I play a 7 chord. But when I play a second chord, there's nothing that needs to happen afterwards. So it's always quite safe. So if I'm wanting to play something that's a little more like maybe a broken chord pattern, I can add that second. I could even add that 6. It doesn't push me anywhere I don't want to go. And so those are some things, a second or a 6, you can add those to your basic chord. Remember to keep that one note going all the time. Use your inversions, be creative with how you play, use different voicings, and that way you're really going to set the pitch well for guys to worship God together in the Spirit.